Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of You Like That Feels Great Baby podcast, recapping week 14 in the NFL, getting to week 15, making some picks, crowning a bum of the week, going over those crazy Monday night games that we just watched with two massive upsets, including Tennessee shocking Miami, which we'll get to later, and Tommy DeVito. Tommy, when you're here, your family, DeVito, with another victory, this time on Monday Night Football against the Packers. Big win for the Vikes there. But let's start, as we always do, with the Vikings and Niners. I want to start with the Vikings first. Not a lot to say other than one of the worst wins in Viking history. We had no points through 48 minutes. We won 3-0. That was one of the most shocking games of the NFL season. Neither team really ever had a chance to score. There was one red zone turnover by the Raiders. There was one missed field goal by the Vikings at around the 48, 49-yard line in the second quarter. But basically, there was no offense at all for 4 quarters, and Josh Dobbs lost his job because of it. When you saw that game and you saw the quote-unquote highlights, what were you thinking?
Yeah. I text you, I watched a little bit more of that than probably maybe most people just because, I don't know, I was fascinated by the 0-0 game. Plus, just with you in the pod, and then being out here, a lot of Raider fans, the Viking interest on this pod. So I was like, yeah, what a eye gouger.
And we thought the Chicago one was bad. Not at all compared to this.
What I don't understand, more of I know this isn't a Raiders podcast, but I don't understand how that offense scores 0. Josh Jacobs is pretty good. I mean, maybe he had his 1 year last year. But Devontae Adams is still there. Aiden O'Connell. I mean, if you play decent, you should. To get shut out at home, awful.
Quote unquote at home. I mean, it was 80%.
But still, you sleep in your own bed.
Yeah,
you sleep in your own bed. You don't have to travel. Anyways, but no, for the Vikings, yeah, exactly. They do not ask how; they ask how many, and whether you win that game 45-42 or 3-0, it doesn't matter. Huge win. The astronaut might have landed on the bench. I did, but I think the bigger story is Jefferson hurt again. And
just to go over the injuries,
this whole thing is weird. I was like, oh, he's injured, and then oh, he's in the hospital. I was like.
Yeah, and they said it was a chest contusion. I was like, he got hit in the lower back, and he grabbed his lower back when he got hit, so that was kind of weird. But the update came out today that apparently he is playing on Saturday, so clearly nothing's broken. So it'll be good to have him back out there, hopefully for a full game this time. The question is, who the hell's going to be throwing to him? It looks like it'll probably be Mullins. I don't know how you can go back to Dobbs after benching him in the fourth quarter and then winning the game with Mullins down the stretch. Either way, obviously the ceiling of the Vikings with the way Dobbs has played has dropped massively. But injuries for the Vikings, but everybody else that they're competing with lost. Seattle lost. Green Bay lost. The Rams lost. So we picked up a game. Detroit lost. We picked up a game on everybody. So it was a fantastic weekend in that regard. But we lost Madison to an ankle injury. We lost Jefferson to a chest injury. Looks like he'll be okay. We lost Brian O'Neill, who was rating as one of the 5 best tackles in the league this year. He got rolled up on, which looks like that could be a tough injury. We lost Dalton Reisner, who's been good at left guard. So it was, excuse me, it was one of those games where it was like, okay, just survive and advance. And boy, did they barely survive, and boy, did they barely advance. But like you said, they don't ask how, they ask how many. So 3-0 victory for the Vikes. Next week, we go into Cincinnati against the unstoppable Jake Browning, who's basically just taken over for Burrow and is playing like Burrow. It's absolutely insane. Cincinnati's favored by 4 in that game. That was a game that earlier in the year I circled as a guaranteed L when I thought Burrow was healthy. And then when Burrow got hurt, I was like, oh, that might actually be a guaranteed W now. Now we're 4-point underdogs on the road because we can't score the last 2 weeks. And, man, you have to be just insanely impressed with Jake Browning going into that game.
Yeah, how could you not be? By the way, did you see the story of I saw Jake Browning either in a post-game press conference or something, or say that Joe Burrow paid for his family to sit in a suite?
I did see that. And they kept panning to his family up in the crowd.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks the part. It's just like he looks confident. He looks calm in the pocket. He's accurate. Yeah, he's a revelation, really.
I was listening to some podcasts this week that were kind of deep diving into Browning. So I only knew him as the quarterback that couldn't quite get Washington over the hump. He was very good in college, but not like elite enough. I think he finished like 8th in the Heisman the one year that Washington made the playoff with Chris Peterson as coach. But all these podcasts are doing deep dives. He was like the number one player in high school, like the most highly recruited quarterback of his draft class. At that point, they were comparing him to like Andrew Luck and whatnot. Then he slightly disappointed at Washington relative to expectations, gets drafted in the late rounds, goes to the Vikings after he gets cut by the team that drafted him, gets cut by us off our practice squad. And it's like these last 2 weeks, you don't see guys who bounce around the league do that. This is like, it'd be one thing if it was, Brock Purdy, where he had all that time in Shanahan's system to kind of figure things out. This is a guy who's just bouncing from team to team. And I mean, this is a really cool story. It's like the Dobbs story all over again, but I think this one has some more staying power. So I'm worried about next week. I think we're going to struggle in that game. I think, especially with Madison and O'Neal hurt, we're not going to be able to run the ball much. And that was probably the blueprint for contending there with a team that's really playing well and going in on the road. That's a game that Cincinnati absolutely has to have if they want to make the playoffs too. So that'll be a tough one. It's a Saturday 10 a.m. game too, so a quick turnaround. Let's move on to the Niners. Ho-hum, another win, another division title, another playoff appearance. Easy win against the Seahawks. First half was a little bit bumpy there, and then coming out in the second half, another touchdown there for Seattle on that pass to Parkinson. But for the most part, relatively routine. Purdy made some amazing throws. Going into next week, they're 13-point favorites against Arizona, who's coming off a bye, which I don't know if there's ever been a 13-plus point favorite against a team who's coming off of a bye like this late in the season. It shows you Vegas sees what you see and what I see. The Niners are by far the best team in the NFL.
Yeah, I saw Vegas. I saw something that said that the Niners would be like a 5-point favorite against anybody. Like, I don't know if you saw that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really understand that. I don't know how you figure that out with a line of these, like.
That's on a neutral field, right? They're like, if it's in the Super Bowl, even if they played whoever, Philly again on a neutral field, they'd be favored by at least 5. I believe it.
That's crazy. But yeah, I mean, they look the part. Biggest thing out of the game, a couple of could be significant injuries. Charvarius Ward, something with his groin, did not return, and that's our best player by far at our weakest position group, so that's a problem. May not impact us, this week or, well, I was going to say against Washington, but that's not the next week after that. Baltimore, yeah, and then at the end of the season they play the Rams, and then obviously the playoffs. And then Javon Hargrave, I guess, pulled his hamstring, potentially could be out a few weeks. And Greenlaw left, but I think he came back. So, yeah, some injuries on the defensive side. But, yeah, I mean, offensively, quietly, I thought I thought it wasn't like the best game I've seen Purdy play. Just I don't know why. Maybe I just wasn't as locked into the game for whatever reason. But he quietly threw for 368.
Including two of the best throws you've ever seen. That one to Debo, oh, my goodness.
And then 368, 2 touchdowns. He had a pick, but like the offense was coming off the field, and the TV catches Kyle yelling at Brandon Ayuk. So, not really. It's not one of like Jimmy's picks where it's like overthrow the guy he's throwing to. It's picked off by somebody who's not even covering the guy you're throwing to. And he would have had the Debo throw. He would have had a touchdown if he was down at the 1. I mean, he easily could have 3-touch 368, which is, I think, the most a Niner quarterback has thrown for since the Super Bowl year when Jimmy threw for, I think, like 424 in Arizona. I saw that was the feels great baby Aaron Andrews game.
Yeah.
And he felt great that night. But yeah, Deebo Samuel looks like a superstar again, and I mean, Brandon Ayuk is a star. I don't know what to say. This is the best team in the league. It is, if they're healthy. And, barring like a rash of injuries, I still think they're the best team even with a couple of injuries. They're loaded everywhere. It is. It really the podcasts and the TV shows are talking about it. Like, it really is. Like, this is going to be a bummer if this team doesn't win the Super Bowl. The last
Yeah,
3 years,
absolutely. I mean,
they've been one of the best teams, but this year, I mean, they are the best. I think that's quite clear at this point. Although I would say I crap on them a lot, but I mean, the Dallas Cowboys are a really good second team in the NFL. But yeah, the thing too about Seattle, like a lot of these games are like before last year. It's like, this is going to get weird. Games against Seattle always get freaking weird. And then it just doesn't feel like that anymore because it's Drew Lock. Although I don't think Geno Smith's getting his job back. Drew Lock he looked like he threw the ball.
he has to be 100% healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, Russell Wilson isn't there. I'm more confident. And DK Metcalf gets into a fight every game I see him play.
Yeah, his whole thing where he does sign language, where he says something in sign language that he could never say without getting fined if he just said it out loud or like mouthed it. I mean, that thing is getting out of hand. I guess he did one a couple of weeks ago where he sign languaged 43 is my son after he just like posterized him for a catch. The guy, I think it was number 43 for whoever it was. And I was like,
I'm your daddy.
Like, this guy is freaking, he's pushing it. And this week he freaking body slammed Fred Warner. He then got up in his face and grabbed his mask and was screaming at him. I'm like, that's cool if you're Megatron, but I mean, dude, you're a good receiver, a very good receiver, but you're on a losing team and you're not playing all that well. It's like, I don't know if it's worth it. I mean, I love DK Metcalf. He's on all my fantasy teams. He's one of Evan's favorite players. Seems like a hell of a player, but he is playing on that razor's edge every game. I mean, he should probably have been ejected maybe 3 times this year. The dude is just a little bit of a basket case, but big win for the Niners yet again. 13-point road favorites against Arizona. I think they'll win that one relatively easily. It's
I don't know
one
why,
of those.
but Arizona and Kyler, I don't know, always like it's just, I think those are now the games, like now that Russ is not there. I think those are the games that just get weird. The Niners haven't been to Arizona since I think they rented since COVID, because last year they played in Mexico.
Right. For that was the Monday night Azteca game. I remember that. So you're saying this might be a little bit of a trap game for the Niners?
I think it could be, because they have the 3 games against Seattle, Philly, Seattle, and then they have Baltimore the next week.
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely have to get that one. It's the Washington one they should win going away. This one,
Washington, I'm not. Yeah. Washington, and then the last game of the season against the Rams. The Rams are going to need it, and they're a really good 6-7 team.
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest storyline that comes out of this weekend, besides our stuff with the Vikings and Niners, is probably these losses by Miami, which was a shocker. Philly, which, I mean, I think everybody expected that to be a game that Dallas maybe could control, but not getting absolutely steamrolled like that. And then obviously the biggest story of all, the Chiefs, which we'll get into a deep dive in a little bit later. Let's start to take a look at next week. Thursday Night Football, we will skip over Easton Stick versus Aiden O'Connell with the Chargers at the Raiders. Raiders are favored by 3.
Didn't they say they were going to like upgrade like they were going to upgrade like the Thursday night games, and I feel like they've just been worse.
They have, and I think
Monday
before
night.
the season,
I think it was
they thought
Monday
they were
night
better.
that ESPN kind of complained like a year or 2 ago or something. That's why they created like the flex games. Because
and Mondays have been pretty good. On the whole, Mondays have been okay this year. Sunday Night Football is always good. Monday night's been pretty good, but it's like, what is this? The 6th or 7th time we're getting the Chargers in a primetime game? Just please stop with this nonsense, especially now that Herbert's out. They're only not firing Staley because the owner's cheap and he wants to wait till the end of the season when the contract runs out. Like, what a terrible game. And then Saturday, we already said the Vikings are at 10 a.m. They're the early game on Saturday. 2 more Saturday games. Pittsburgh at Indy. This is an elimination game. It's very likely one of these teams is going to make the playoffs, which is kind of sad. Like, these teams are both not very good. I think Pittsburgh is sliding. I think Indy, as a 2.5-point favorite, is one of the teams I want to look at as one of my picks of the week. When you look at that game and when you look at how Trubisky played last week, is it Indy or nothing for you on that? Or do you think that Tomlin could possibly win this one?
I love Mike Tomlin, but it's been a 2-week shit burger. First to lose by 2 touchdowns at home to Arizona, and then to lose to Bailey Zappi and the Patriots at home the next week. That was the game to turn it around. No, I would. Yeah, I expect the Colts to win. The Colts are playing well. Shane Steichen is doing a damn good job, and yeah, they're at home, and
They had won 5 in a row until they ran into the Jake Browning buzzsaw this weekend. So I still like Indy there. That may not make my top 5 picks, which who gives a shit at this point? I went 0-5 last week. We are in a total slide, but we'll see if that makes it into the list. The Saturday night game is one that you and I are going to be watching very intently. Denver at Detroit. Detroit came out as a 3-point favorite. It's already been bet up to 5, so now it's Detroit -5. The Vikings are pulling big time for Denver here because all of a sudden, hey, we played like shit these last 3 weeks, but we control our own destiny to win the division. If we win the 4 games that we have on our schedule, we will win the NFC North, which is absolutely insane to say after we started 1-4 and Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles. It's wild. But you've been on this bandwagon for the last 4 weeks. After earlier in the year being so high on Detroit, you are now 100% out on them as a contender.
yeah, they looked bad yesterday against Chicago. Jared Goff is kind of regressing to the mean, I guess you could say. Yeah, their defense is terrible. I thought every time I watch their games, Aiden Hutchinson looks like he flashes to me, but I watched yesterday and he got a sack, and they're like, that's his second sack all season. I'm like, 2.
Yeah.
I was like, that can't be right. And then I was like, yep, let me just make 100% sure.
Yeah, because I think the consensus on him was he's going to be your 10 sack guy every year in this league. And sure, he flashes, he gets off the edge quick on these run plays and whatnot, but his job is to get to the passer, and he's not doing it.
Yeah, that's
the way
wrong.
that
Whoever said that, that's wrong. He's at 6.5.
Okay, I mean that's okay. It's a little underperforming for a guy who was picked that high, but regardless,
their back seven's terrible.
They've given up 28 points to the Bears twice in the last 3 weeks.
They should have lost to the Bears twice.
Yeah, they should be 8-5. They shouldn't even be 9-4. They got lucky with that first Bears game.
Their wins don't look as good. Remember they won in Kansas City, and we're like, what a freaking win! It's like Kansas City's pretty average, even when healthy. And then they beat Seattle at home, which Seattle might miss the playoffs.
They lost to Seattle at home.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So, but my point, competitive game.
Show me a game where they were elite from start to finish against a decent team, because it hasn't happened. They got the doors blown off them by Green Bay on Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
I
would say they beat them. I remember that Thursday night game in Green Bay. They looked good that game, but at that, I'm not trying to rewrite it, but the Packers weren't what they are now, and right now they're a
6-7 team that lost to Tommy DeVito.
Yeah, so I guess I criticized Dallas. Who have you beaten? That was my big thing. Dak, you're going to win MVP. You have 0 wins against teams with a winning record. Your best win was against Seattle, who had a winning record, but now does not. So who has a winning record now, teams like Dallas is just Philly. Big win. Big win for this. But Detroit.
There's no resume builder there. There's
I guess you could still say Kansas City, but that was Kansas City.
No Kelsey, no Chris Jones, and they're not that good anyway with both of them. So pretty shocking. We were just talking about Green Bay. So they host Tampa next week. They're 3.5-point favorites in that game. That is now a must-win for them after they dropped that game to the Giants as 6.5-point favorites on Monday Night Football. So, typically in a normal season, if you're 6-7, you have to win out to make the playoffs. This is not a normal season. The NFC is super weak. But if they lose this one, you would think they have to be done, no matter how easy their schedule is from there on out, because Tampa is another team that they're competing for with that wild card. They're both 6-7. Tampa Bay now controls their destiny in the South after that win against Atlanta last week. They rule the roost at 6-7, which is kind of hilarious. I'll be pulling for Tampa Bay in this game because I think it's one of those where I need Tampa Bay to win the division because they're the only team in the NFC that owns the tiebreaker over the Vikings that we're like in a battle with right now. We already beat Green Bay, New Orleans, Atlanta. We have the tiebreaker over both Seattle and the Rams because all of our losses have basically been out of conference. I believe we're 6-2 in conference. So it's like, as long as Tampa wins that division, we could even finish 8-9 and still make the playoffs. So yeah, I'm looking at that game and I'm saying we've been fading Green Bay on this podcast all year. It finally, of course, comes to fruition when we don't bet against Green Bay this week, where they finally shit themselves on national TV. But looking at that game, I mean, the Niners don't give a shit anymore because they've already wrapped everything up. They're just playing for seeding. But if you're looking at that game, would you pick Green Bay after what you just saw on Monday Night Football, or would you look to bet on Tampa? Because I think Mayfield's been pretty frisky.
I like that word, frisky. I'm high on Tampa Bay. Like I think out of all the shit in the NFC South, like they're the least shitty. But I just with both of these teams, I have no idea what we're getting Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Like just you could watch either team this year and you're like, that team is awful, or you could be like, the Packers could be like a surprising NFC North pick for next year, and then you watch them tonight and you're like, they suck. Yeah, no, I don't know, but Packers at home, they have to win it. It's crazy it is Tampa. They don't have to win it because their division is so terrible.
Yeah, it's going to come down to their divisional games anyway. I worry that Tampa Bay will not be up for this game because they know the bigger ones are coming down the road. And Green Bay, this is their Super Bowl. They're like, if they lose this, they're toast. So looking at that one, if you have to pick, I would probably pick Green Bay -3.5. We'll skip over the Houston-Tennessee game. Good on you, Tennessee, for winning that game tonight. Looks like C.J. Stroud will be out for that one with a concussion. Tennessee's a 1.5-point favorite because it looks like it'll be Davis Mills in that one. Jets at Miami. So Miami's favored by 12. Jets fans are wondering after last week, where the hell was that Zach Wilson the last 3 seasons? Like, what a performance from him. They had no points at the half. In the second half, he was basically perfect. 320 yards and 2 touchdowns and an easy victory over Houston. I mean, Jets fans are like, where the hell was that? It's like too little, too late. But the big story here, Miami just choked away a 13-point lead on Monday Night Football against Tennessee. Just an utter collapse for Mike McDaniel and the boys. And all of a sudden, Baltimore is now, ruling the roost in the AFC for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's a terrible loss for Miami. For all the people who want to vote Tyreek Hill for the MVP, it's pretty good game to put that case on. He left, and the Tua in the offense was not the same. Yeah, I hate to say it, but like Miami feels like they feel like the Houston Rockets, like with James Harden. You're like, that's cool, but like you're not winning, dick. But Houston was more like James Harden doesn't want to play, like lack of effort type thing. Like Miami's like, you're good, but like I'm not putting you anywhere near like the top, even in the AFC. Like forget Dallas or the Niners, but like Baltimore, no.
They're a classic front runner like Dallas was earlier in the year, where it's like you beat up on the bad teams in a game that's a shootout. You're gonna just blow everybody away. But in these games that like you have to have against a Vrabel team, for instance, tonight, where it's just like it's a slobber knocker. They just don't come up big in those kind of games. Whereas a team like Baltimore was in a very similar game with the Rams over the weekend and somehow found a way. The little coaching on the margins things that guys like Harbaugh are a little bit better than McDaniel at this point in his career. That was a brutally tough loss for Miami. Sorry, Miami fans. Hopefully you rebound quickly here because all of a sudden Buffalo is looking at them in the rearview mirror. Probably the number one story in sports today. Next week, it's Kansas City at New England. Kansas City's favored by 10. We're all talking about Mahomes. Fit on the sideline. We'll get into that a little bit later, but my note here was that I think it's official now after watching that game. Kansas City's era is over. Era in quotation marks. Like this whole thing with Taylor Swift, put that to the side right now. If you're a Chiefs fan, if you're even if you're
if I was a Chiefs fan, I'd be so freaking sick of Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
and Kelsey and like all of this. I'd be sick of the commercials from him, Mahomes, everything. I'd be like,
it's like we are in crisis on the field. All this other shit does not matter right now. Like that whole thing, the vibe there in Kansas City is at the worst point it's been since Mahomes has.
you know what's
joined,
crazy is like I always thought like, if any one of my teams won, like how much leeway would I give them for like dumb shit? Like you give me one championship, God forbid it was the Sharks. Like I always thought like here's a decade of like I don't even care. Like I won't criticize a thing. I'll be like, you made me so happy with this. If I was a Chiefs fan, I don't know. I was just thinking like I don't care that you've won 2 Super Bowls. Like I'd be like we with the roster and the quarterback and the head coach, like we have an opportunity to win like 4 out of 5 or like every year with Mahomes it's Super Bowl or bust really, and it's just like I'd be just livid because it's just something weird every week. Every week.
And you look around the AFC and you go, okay, Baltimore has some flaws. They're 10-3, they're number 1. Miami, as we saw tonight, a ton of flaws. Jacksonville, very flawed team, as we saw in their performance against Cincinnati the week before and then at Cleveland this week. Cleveland starting 38-year-old Joe Flacco, and then you got all those teams at 7-6 like Indy and Houston and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and whatnot. Like it is on the whole a very mediocre AFC. Like this should be a season where the Chiefs go 14-3, get the 1 seed, and breeze to a Super Bowl appearance where they have to deal with the Niner or Cowboy or Eagle juggernaut. But rather than that, they're looking at a 4 seed right now, which is unheard of for those Kansas City fans. And right now, all the stories are about Reed and the refs and Mahomes and Kelsey and Swift. And like you were saying, if you're a fan right now, you got to be like, hey, we are a tire fire on the field. Let's fix that. Who gives a shit about anything else?
Yeah. Yeah. I just think about it too, like Brady when he never really did this when he was playing. Maybe I'm wrong. But like I don't mean the complaint. He would yell and scream and all that shit. But like I mean like the extra stuff. Like he was married to Giselle and like I don't know, no one ever cared. Like Giselle's a supermodel. Like I know she's maybe not Taylor Swift in popularity, but like I don't know. It's just
might be time to make things a little more private.
I feel I'm too involved in the Chiefs, like Real Housewives of Kansas City TV show. I feel like I'm watching a show I don't want to watch. I don't know. Like but like we said, on the field, Travis Kelce looks like he aged 7 years in the offseason.
This is his worst season as a pro, no doubt.
Like if anyone votes on the Pro Bowl or All Pro, like he should not be a Pro Bowler or All Pro.
Oh no way. Yeah, he's not even a top 5 tight end this season. Obviously, he's still a weapon, and everybody has to account for him. But just on the performance this season alone, he's not one of the 3 or 4 best tight ends.
Which is a problem because everything else that they have is dog water.
Yeah, that whole thing runs through him, and they got to get him back quick, back to the performance that we expect from him. Maybe this is kind of it for him at 34. Sometimes those top-level athletes like him and Gronk and whatnot, maybe they hit a wall.
Did you hear on his podcast with his brother that they posed the questions? They were talking about Jason Kelce, like, oh, he's thought about retirement. He's pondered it, like, he'd probably be on 1-year deals till he retires. And Jason Kelce was like, oh, yeah, this could be it this year. But then they kind of like, ha, like, well, have you thought about retirement? And like Travis Kelce looks serious. He's like, I've thought about it like every year the last like 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, when you've made that kind of money.
Retire?
Yeah, when you made that kind of money and your body is getting beat to shit. I don't know if you watched that Kelce documentary, the Jason Kelce one.
You know what's crazy is I haven't watched it, but Kayla did because she saw all the clips of his wife on TikTok and was like, oh, she seems like a really nice wife and stuff. That's like I came into the living room and I'm like, what are you watching? And like I know what she's watching. I'm just like
Jamie did the same thing because she saw that on TikTok and then she wanted to watch the doc, and it's like Kylie Kelce comes out as like a really, cool person from that. I
love
doc.
that scene when she's like, we're spending how much? This is bananas. and they're like super. I love when super rich people act like normal humans.
Yeah, they're like down to earth. They live in a modest house. Everything that came out of that was really positive for the Kelces and whatnot. But the point I was going to make is, you see what Jason Kelce looks like after a game or in the off season. He is just limping around in constant pain. And, you just know that Travis Kelce is probably like, look, I've made $100 million. I'm possibly going to get married to Taylor Swift. Why would I keep beating the shit out of myself? It seems like maybe he's slowing down here and he's ready to call it a career. Let's talk about a couple other games before you get to your Jack and the Bum of the Week. Chicago at Cleveland, Cleveland -3. My note here is, how bad are NFL QBs right now if Joe Flacco comes off the street and is already like on maybe even top 10? I mean, he was so freaking good last week, and you look around the league and you go, there's no way he could even be top 15. And then you start rattling off, oh, well, with Rodgers and Cousins out for the year and Brady retired, like there aren't a lot of guys that are any good right now. Watson's out for all these guys. Flacco was great, and he was pretty good at the game I went at the week before against the Rams. He was even better this week, like 38 years old. He said he was watching games 3 weeks ago on his mom's couch, and now he's throwing for 300 yards in a Browns victory. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think it's crazy, but like I don't think it's that crazy in the sense that I just think I think teams and just the league in general has become so infatuated with a different type of quarterback other than the sitting duck that's Flacco that was. But the problem is like there's only like one or two guys that can play like Mahomes, or especially for year after year after year. That like I think we're going to start to see maybe a little bit more teams like, oh, like, yeah, no, it definitely is damn important to like be able to sit in the pocket and be accurate and just throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And like, who gives a shit if you can run the read option or whatever? Yeah, because I think that's why there's struggles in the league at quarterback in general, because I don't think most of them compared to like, I think kind of maybe what Brady was implying, or what he said about the league being worse, is that like no one really. I just think they've devalued the pocket passer.
Yeah, throwing accurate passes from the pocket has been devalued in the case of every quarterback now takes almost every snap from the shotgun, either hands it off to the running back or pretends to hand it off to the running back and then makes a quick decision. Like that's what they want. They want, a Lamar Jackson type, or one of these guys who, fake the handoff, you're a threat to run, or you'll throw it to your first hot route. Like that's it. And like these guys that can scan the field and just, deliver the ball on a dime were devalued. Well, a guy like Flacco, who just has no athleticism left in his body at age 38, he's like 6'6", 250. He cannot move. Looked pretty freaking good. It was pretty shocking. I couldn't believe that game. I did pick Cleveland, not on the pod, but I bet on them in real life when it got down to -1, just because I thought Lawrence wasn't going to be able to move. But it ended up being a Flacco game after all that. We'll skip over the NFC South games. You got the Giants at New Orleans -6, and then you got Atlanta -2.5 at Carolina. Falcons are still alive. Saints are still alive. Giants somehow are still alive. Kind of crazy. Let's go to the big game of Sunday. That's Dallas at Buffalo. Buffalo's favored by 1.5. I really want to bet Buffalo here. I think this is a flat spot for Dallas going on the road against a quality opponent, and the Bills are right back in this thing after all. McDermott is off the schneid after 3 or 4 really tough weeks for that guy. Would you look at Buffalo here, or are you still convinced that Dallas might be good enough to like go in and win this game handily?
I think this is a bigger game for Dallas than last week.
Really okay.
Like I don't mean like obviously the division thing, everything, but like Philly just, everyone's talking about, I hated it, just like making excuses for the Niner game, but talking about their schedule, all that crap. Like they're clearly not playing well. I kind of expected, I didn't, like you said, I didn't think they were going to throttle them, but I mean, I expected, like, if you're what we kind of think you are, Dallas, like you win that game at home. Now, can they go on the road to Buffalo where the weather might be not perfect? I don't know what the forecast is, but it's not a dome like your Jerry World is.
Cold as shit is what he forecasted.
I'm forecasting cold as shit. Against a really good quarterback and against a team who has to win it. And I think this will say more about Dallas. Buffalo, I just have no idea what I'm going to get. Absolutely not. I know they beat the Chiefs controversially penalty, I guess you could say. But I don't think the Chiefs are very good. So I don't know. I
It's a
think
tough one. There's a reason it's 1.5. I thought it would be Buffalo, maybe -3, and a lot of people would run in to bet on Dallas, but they set it at 1.5 because they're like, hey, Dallas is really freaking good. We can't give the full 3 to Buffalo. What a performance by Dallas on Sunday.
I don't know why,
Football.
but I just think it. I would have. I'm kind of shocked Dallas isn't favored.
Given that they're 10-3, Buffalo's 7-6, but I think Vegas and the advanced stats people just freaking love Buffalo, even after those choke job games against like Denver, and they had that horrible loss earlier in the year.
Well, they had the horror. They had the horrible win against the Giants.
Yeah, against Tyrod Taylor. I remember that one. That was a crazy Sunday night game. Washington at the Rams. Rams favored by 6. I'm leaning towards the Rams in that spot. After they lost that heartbreaker in Baltimore last week, which we somehow didn't cover. They have to win that one to stay in the NFC wildcard race. I mean, this is a game where you're playing. It's just like the Green Bay game. You're playing a team that's worse than you. You have to win this one because there's going to be more challenging ones for them ahead. They play at San Francisco later in the year, so it's like got to have this one if you have any chance of making the playoffs. Sunday night's a really good one, especially now that Lawrence is confirmed to be healthy. Baltimore -3.5 at Jacksonville. Dolphins fans are going to be watching that one because their only path to getting the bye is to win next week against the Jets and then have Baltimore lose at Jacksonville, and then they can start thinking about maybe getting the 1 seed again after last night's collapse. So Baltimore may be able to wrap things up in terms of the 1 seed with a win there and then a win the following week. And then that game at San Francisco won't mean as much. But big one on Sunday Night Football. Do you lean either side there? Because I'm kind of getting off that Jacksonville bandwagon.
Yeah, I think pound for pound, Baltimore is the best team in the AFC. And I don't know, Jacksonville is just every time I watch them, I'm just underwhelmed. Like I'm sure he wasn't 100%, but you played Trevor, and it's just like, yeah. I don't know. I guess the big picture is just like I think the shine is really wearing off on Trevor Lawrence. Like, like forget John Elway, Andrew Luck comparisons. Like, I mean, his numbers say he's at best average, and
You take Brock Purdy over him every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Yeah,
number 1 versus number 252. Yeah,
it's and it's like I know Cleveland's got a good defense. It was in Cleveland, but still, like, how do you not win that game? Like, Jaguars are good. Jaguars have good players, and then now you're at home, big spot against a really good team, and it's like you.
It can't be an ETN game. It has to be like, Trevor, show us something. Go 24 of 32 for 4 touchdowns. Like, do something. Like, if you really think you can contend, which when you're on a rookie deal as a quarterback is the chance that your team is going to have to be, superstars around them and win a Super Bowl, and they're not anywhere close to it.
I was thinking about it because, like, all these guys just get paid. Like, I know the big one that everyone kind of was the big story, obviously, because of the homework clause, but the Kyler Murray one, I kind of was like, why on earth did you just give him, like, just hand him money? Like, I don't, like, people are like, oh, you have to pay. Like, what are you going to do? Like, draft a guy? It's like, yeah, then pay someone like damn near $200 million if you're Kyler. And like Trevor, my point is, like, at the end of this, the Jaguars just going to be, here's the cap balloons. Are they going to say, here's $300 million? For what?
For the 17th best quarterback in the NFL.
It's like, but then like, do we like move off Trevor Lawrence? Mr. Sunshine, Mr. like can't miss prospect. I don't. I was just thinking about that recently. I was just like, because you don't win when you pay the quarterback. I mean, it does not work. Look at Mahomes and the money he's like. The team around him is garbage.
Last year was a masterclass by the Chiefs. This year is what happens when you pay a quarterback $55 million a year. Like, there are no wide receivers to throw to. Their pass defense isn't as good. They're not as clutch in big games. Things are slipping. That's what happens, and that's what's going to happen to the Jags in 2 years if they, give Lawrence the bag. So show us something, Trevor. We haven't seen it yet. He's been good. He has not been good enough to consider the Jaguars a Super Bowl contender. Then the last game of the week, Monday Night Football, enormous game. Philly -3.5 at Seattle. Another one, just like for the Rams and the Packers and the Vikings. Seattle's got to have it. I mean, they've lost 3 in a row. Granted, they've been against the Niners twice and the Cowboys, so they played nothing but probably the 2 best teams in the NFL the last 3 weeks. So that's really tough, but they're 6-7. They're reeling. Might be Drew Lock here. Might be Geno Smith. We don't know. A little bit of extra rest for maybe Geno to get healthy. Philly -3.5. I'm not going to bet on this game. If I did, it would probably be to look at the over, given that these are 2 good offenses and 2 pretty suspect defenses. But, I mean, wild game here. Imagine if Philly loses this one.
I actually like Seattle in this game.
Okay. +3.5. Joey's going with Seattle. I might have to add that to the picks because I've been doing it on my own and it's been a shit show. We've had 4 straight losing weeks.
Weird shit just happens in that stadium. Especially on the primetime games, like just all of them, just shit happens. Just like
the fail Mary.
Yeah, all of it. Between that, you had the Niners stopped them at the half-yard, 1-inch line
to win the division.
I mean, I remember the NFC Championship game with the Packers, like
onside kick.
Yeah, it's just all of it.
I think the punter threw a touchdown to an offensive lineman in that game. It's like, I like that. Let's roll with Seattle +3.5 in our picks later. It's a must win for them. Philly, I mean, if you're the 5 seed, is it really that bad? You're going to end up, going to like New Orleans or whatever. Like, who gives a shit? They'll win that game pretty easily. So I like the call on Seattle there. Let's go to your Jack and the Bum of the week. We've recapped week 14. We've gone into week 15. Let's get to the Jack and the Bum of the week. This is going to be great. Obviously, there's some candidates here. You and I both agree on who the number 1 candidate should be, and he's coming later. But I put Trubisky on there. That was one of the worst quarterbacking performances I've seen in a while. Him and Ritter this year, just aesthetically, when you watch them, you're like, that guy is like so awful. I can't imagine if he was.
You're like, Joe Flacco, it could be better than you and is. And you're like, people off the street are better than you.
Yes. Joe Flacco was pounding beers on a sofa like 2 weeks ago and is so much better than this guy who has been practicing every day for the last 6 months.
And then we don't mean like, if Tom Brady decided to play, like, obviously we're talking like, I think if Alex Smith is healthy enough, would be better than Desmond Ritter.
Ryan Fitzpatrick comes off the Amazon studio set. Throw him out there. I'd rather have him than Trubisky. And I'll put Jalen Hurts on this list of candidates because he has been bad basically for like 4 weeks. This is another terrible performance. They put up 6 offensive points at Dallas. Like, not good there from Jalen Hurts. Jared Goff, the Novato kid, cannot play in cold weather. I mean, that guy. Every time he plays in cold weather.
People can just not play bad, or could just play bad in the cold. Like, it's not because they're cold. I feel like with certain guys, especially the California guys, like they just look cold.
Oh yeah, he wears like the full balaclava thing that covers his face, and I'm like, that guy just looks like he would rather be on the beach. And it's like, that's Jared Goff to a T. He played in LA, he grew up in the Bay Area. He went to Cal. He's like, what is this -6 degree bullshit? He was terrible in that game. The Raiders for putting up a goose egg against the Vikings. Good on you, Brian Flores. Great game plan, but Aiden O'Connell and that Raiders offense, that was disgusting. You kept the Vikings season alive single-handedly. Thank you, Raiders, but you should have been one of the Jack and the Bum of the Week candidates. And then a late entry is the Dolphins for a 14-point collapse on Monday Night Football, but there was only one way to go here for this one.
Yeah. Only one way to go. Bum of the Week is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, just talk about masterclass of just pathetic after in a post-game rant, scrum. I don't get it. I said it. I thought last week we had a similar scenario with the Packer game with the no pass interference calls, and he probably had the most diplomatic answer you could have. You're like, oh, you know what? That's good, Patrick. Like, referees have a tough job. Like, we get it. No one's out here like really getting screwed, as far as we know. Refs could be on the take. We don't know. But yeah, I thought it was his worst moment as a professional by far.
By far.
Like, and it's one of those, like, I really was like shocked. Like, again, we just saw it. And like, what was different this time? Like, what it wasn't any more of a crushing loss. Like at least the Bills are like kind of a decent, team. Josh, like you lost. If you would have told Chiefs fans you would lose to Jordan Love this season, like, huh?
They'd be devastated.
It's I don't get it. Patrick, like I don't think this is. I think later in the season and years from now, like people just be like, oh, remember that funny time he did this? Like, I don't think this is who he like really is as like a.
There's a chance, though, it could be an inflection point in his career where we'll be like, hey, this is when he became the villain, because he's had basically unanimous approval through the first 6 seasons of his career. And then last night, I see all these memes where they put like him yelling and the audio is a crybaby sound, or the audio is just like, Kermit the Frog crying or whatever. I'm like, damn, it's the tide is turning on this guy.
Yeah, I do think I think a part of it is just the Chiefs. Like I think people are just sick of the Chiefs. Like similarly to when you're just sick of New England, like with Belichick and Brady, and especially when they were like being, investigated for Spygate and the deflate gate, like all this shit, and then you're seeing like, them just win all the time. But like I never really saw them, the Patriots, like, or Tom specifically, be this involved, like, with other shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in the offseason, I see Patrick on the golf course. I see him on TV, State Farm. I see Kelsey everywhere. I see now Taylor's. Like, I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of anything Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even just because they beat my Niners in the Super Bowl or because they're just winning all the time. I'm tired of when the main thing isn't the main thing. And for the Chiefs this season, the main thing does not seem like it's football.
Yeah, it's not how well you throw the ball down the field and Mahomes putting up 5,400 yards and winning the MVP. It's about all the side quests, all the shit that like they want to be like the 2016 Warriors, where it's like, we are so good that we're now doing these side quests. We got Taylor Swift here. I got only rookie receivers and I'm still going to make it work out. Me and Andy Reid are in 8 different commercials together where he's trying to steal my chicken nuggets. It's like, no, play football, dude. Like, if you want to be mentioned in the same conversation as Brady, you need to get to at least 5 Super Bowls, and you're blowing a golden opportunity at one here. Like, they need to get that shit turned around right now, because even if they run the table, they're still probably only a 3 seed. Like, it's wild.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this too. It might be the first we get to see Patrick Mahomes in a road playoff game.
Thank God. Yeah, what is it? Since 2018, every single one's been there.
He's never played a road playoff game.
I guess technically the Super Bowl kind of counted, and he got absolutely, pummeled in that game. So that's pretty wild. So there it is. Patrick Mahomes, Joey's Jack and the Bum of the Week for Week 14 in the NFL for all these sideline antics after a tough loss at home against Buffalo. Let's go to the You Like That picks of the week. Joey, we are in dire straits, 0-5 last week. I need your help. I need podcast listenership help. We've lost 4 weeks in a row. We're still 5 games over 500, 36, 31, and 3. But I've been talking with my friends, like, it's been 4 straight weeks for me, not only on the pod, but in real life. I cannot pick a thing. Like, college football's been okay. I bet on some others. I bet on some soccer and do okay. The NFL has just been kicking my ass for 4 weeks. So let's turn it around right here. You tell me if any of these are games that you're not that comfortable with. I like Atlanta -2.5 at Carolina. I think Carolina's the worst team in the NFL by a mile. I think Atlanta has to have the game. That's one that I look at that I say, hey, if I lose that game, if Carolina comes out and wins after putting up like 200 yards of offense and getting absolutely crushed by New Orleans last week, I'll take it. If you're going to beat me that way, then I'm just meant to lose, period. So give me Atlanta -2.5. Cleveland -3. They're hosting Chicago. For me, yes, Chicago has played well recently, and Justin Fields has been good, but 3 points at home for Cleveland, that seems fair, right?
Yeah.
I think they're just so much better, especially on defense. And then the Niners -13. Taking a team by 13 on the road against a team coming off a bye seems like a terrible idea to be a long-term winning sports bettor. However, this Niners team is freaking unstoppable right now. I'm throwing it to you, though, because this feels like one you might talk me off, because you think this is a trap game.
I think it absolutely could be. The problem is you still have to play the game, and just the Niners are better everywhere than the Cardinals. But I mean, the Niners were a huge favorite against a team they're better than yesterday and did not cover.
So some other candidates for there would be maybe Denver +5 at Detroit, maybe the horrible frickin' New England Patriots +10 at home against Kansas City, who's really
I thought that could be one. I was leaning I think the Rams are really good. I think they beat Washington pretty good.
okay. So we'll
Because
go
I think
Rams -6.
Washington, unlike the Giants or somebody like Chicago, even like to use your word, frisky.
Mhm.
Like I think Washington is stale.
Yes.
Like there's just nothing. There's just no story. Like
It's Ron Rivera's coaching philosophy from 2011. The players have given up. They hate the enemy, by the way. He's had a really surprisingly good offense this year, but the players hate that guy. Like, it's a tire fire there.
I find that so interesting. Like when it was kind of not so secret in Kansas City that they're like he's good, but like he's kind of a dick. And then he goes to an entirely new organization who like desperately needs his services, and the new players are like, this guy sucks.
His results are good, but he's hated in the locker room. It's one of those ones that I understand where you're coming from, and I do like the Rams there. That was another thought I had was Rams -6, just because it's like between Kupp and Nakua and Donald and Stafford still has an absolute cannon for an arm.
I mean, they just like the game you went to. The Rams were just at home against Cleveland and put up what 37.
Yeah,
36?
they covered that game easily after I think they were only ahead by 1 heading into the fourth quarter, and then they just put them away. So I think they're good enough to win against a bad Washington team. I like Buffalo -1.5 in the marquee game of the weekend against Dallas. I just think if we get a forecast later in the week that says that it's really bad weather, then you have a great bet if you have Buffalo. If it's just kind of bad and it's just like 20 degrees or whatever, maybe Dallas can move the ball a little bit. But they've been in that dome playing against bad teams and against a not informed Philly. I think going on the road in Buffalo is one that I feel pretty confident in. And then I'm going to throw your Seahawks +3.5 on Monday Night Football on there. I was originally thinking about adding the Niners to that group. I was originally thinking, hey, maybe I'll add New England +10, but let's stick with some teams that are good and that are playing for their playoff lives. You know,
if New England, let alone covered, but I mean.
Oh, if New England wins against Kansas City, batten down the hatches. That is first takes.
I think
dream.
You know what I'll throw Belichick a bone. I think he really could maybe like stymie this Chiefs offense. But the problem is like could the Patriots put up like 10 points?
Yeah, they could do a great job and hold the Chiefs to like 14 and then still lose by 8 points.
By 14.
Yeah, it absolutely could happen. I like these picks.
I'm not saying to pick them to win. I actually like Seattle to maybe win.
It's a game they have to have if they have any intention on making the playoffs. And then, like I said, the Eagles, this is the fourth of a 4-game stretch for them has just been insane. They're going to end up losing at least 2 of them, maybe 3. So we'll see. So there's the picks of the week. We got to get back on the horse here. Atlanta -2.5, Cleveland -3, the Rams -6, Buffalo -1.5, and then Seattle +3.5 on Monday Night Football. Joey, your feels great, baby, your wildest take. You're going with one that 7-8 weeks ago would have been probably the craziest take in the history of podcasting, but right now doesn't seem so nuts.
I think a week ago it might have been pretty nuts, but this is the my wildest take, and it's pretty wild, but I don't think it's as wild as people might think, because if you look at the standings, the Let's Ride Broncos are only 1 game behind the Kansas City Chiefs, and my take is I think the Denver Broncos win the AFC West. And I looked at their schedule. They have similar opponents in the Chargers, Raiders, and Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is the Chiefs go to Cincinnati, and Denver plays this week against Detroit. I have more confidence that Denver upsets Detroit than the Chiefs going to Cincinnati with Jake Browning. Isn't that wild? That is wild. Yeah, I think that. I mean, we shit on him all first 4 or 5 weeks, but I mean, you got to give him credit. The Sean Payton and Russell Wilson's playing really well for a
Mhm.
guy who took more shit than anyone I've ever seen in professional sports. Like other than maybe LeBron when he first left, but it wasn't like you were shitty at your. He was still like obviously the best basketball player in the league.
Mhm.
Like Russ, I mean,
He was
you know it's
attacked
bad.
for
Like you know it's
everything.
bad. Like when I'm like, dude, this is a bit much, guys. It's just like
It's the guy who you hated for 10 years, and you're like, hey, lay off.
I just like this feels like I'm watching at the podium like just look like a defeated human being, let alone athlete. But no, he's played really well. Sean Payton clearly is obviously a better coach than Nate Hackett. Their defense, Vance Joseph, gave him a ton of credit. Ever since they gave him a 70 burger to Miami, they've been super frisky. And
They
yeah,
held the Chargers to only 7 points, and it could have been a shutout. I mean, that defense has really turned it around. Their only bad performance, I think, since the 70 burger was against the Texans last week, and now with the Texans having an injured quarterback and a lot of injuries on that team, with Pittsburgh absolutely reeling, like it really does look like the Broncos are going to make the playoffs. They also own the tiebreaker over Buffalo. Like it looks like they're going to make it, but you're saying they could take it a step further. And if they make it, that would probably mean Kansas City was like 10-7. If they win the division, they could somehow miss out on the playoffs. Maybe KC slips to 9-8. Wouldn't that be wild? That would be one of the craziest stories in recent NFL history if this collapse.
like
Really did happen.
I think the Chiefs are going to lose to the Bengals. And I think the Chiefs are going to lose one of these games they really should not lose. I don't know to who. Like, they just own the Raiders. They just freaking own the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
That game is going to be in Kansas City. I don't think they're going to lose to the Raiders, especially after whatever the hell we just saw yesterday. I guess I'm optimistic that the Patriots might give them a bit of a game this week, but I think it's the Charger game, last game of the season. That means Denver would be playing the Raiders because they do all division games.
Yep.
So Denver would beat the Raiders, and I think the Chargers, for as much BS as they've exhibited over the last couple of years with losing these games, I think Brandon Staley knows he's getting fired. I think Justin Herbert maybe is healthy for that game. I think they try everything they can to screw over the Chiefs.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something? That would be sick. I think the crazy thing is like I had a positive overall view of the Chiefs as a team, as an organization, of Mahomes, of Reed, and all of a sudden I'm really rooting against them to like win this division. And I don't really like Sean Payton. I kind of strongly dislike the
See,
guy.
that's I was like, it was a bad 24 hours for the Chiefs as a unit, but like I think Sean Payton's still a bigger turd burger.
Oh, of course. But it's like what strange events had to transpire for me to actually like really dislike the Chiefs all of a sudden. So this is wild. So there's Joey's wildest take of the week. Denver wins the AFC West. Wouldn't that be something after they started? I believe it was 1-4, just like the Vikings. Let's close the pod. A couple things outside of the NFL I wanted to go over. How about that cheap Ohtani deal? 10 years, $700 million. Just some chump change, just $250 million more than Mahomes, the largest contract in NFL history. Cool quarter bill over the NFL record. Baseball, I mean, like I said, once the A's move, where
are they getting this money from?
But like, where? Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too. Is like,
I mean, we used to say that when like A-Rod would get his like 10 years, 250.
Yeah,
like $700 million.
And did you see what came out today? He's going to be paid $20 million total in 10 years, $2 million a year, and then after that, $68 million a year for 10 years after that, so they can spread out the. I
don't understand that.
It's so that they can spend more during his contention window.
But what I don't understand is there's no cap in baseball.
Well, there is a collective bargaining tax that. It's just like hockey where the life of the deal, no matter how you structure it, is divided. So it's like For 10 years, they could
Yeah.
have said, okay, that's 70 million against the collective bargaining tax each year, but because they spread it out so heavily, it's only like 48.8 million a year. But the thing that they're pointing out is the Dodgers themselves, like, yes, the competitive balance tax will say it's like 48.8 million a year, but the Dodgers themselves are literally only giving him 2 million a year for the next 10 years. So they're like going to be willing to go over the tax and pay the tax like Joe Lacob does with the Warriors. So it's like, if you're the other teams in the NL West, oh my God, you have to just be like, how is this legal?
But that means they got to write like a $680 million check year 10.
Yeah, after he's
I could be,
retired.
and he's already had. Correct me if I'm wrong, but not one but two Tommy Johns.
I believe he's had one Tommy John and then one other arm procedure. But yeah, that's.
I mean, I don't want to be bearer of bad news here, but I don't think this is going to work out.
You're literally unanimous approval down here in LA. Everyone's so excited, and I was thinking the same thing. I was like, maybe year 3, it's like he's hitting 240 with 38 homers.
Again. Like, which one of these have worked out?
None of them. Harper is okay, but Stanton terrible. A-Rod,
even like Mike Trout.
Trout terrible.
The dude is injured all the time.
Yeah.
Even in other sports.
Machado terrible.
Yeah. And like, in football, it's like, but it'd be like only a 4 or 5 year deal. Baseball's like, fuck it. Here's 14 years. Like,
Trout's 14 years, 425. Bryce Harper's 13 years, 330. Like, what in the world?
Like, honestly, you really we all want to believe that all these players work incredibly hard, and they all do, really. But you can't tell me that if you handed me like a 10-year contract worth this amount of money, like I'm dialed in, like in the off season, like working out, or like if I hit a slump during the season, like I'm just grinding to get out of it. Like, check still clears, baby. Like, you have to be wired so competitively, or like so to have that not impact you. That's why people have career years when they're in a contract.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the incentive is I just want to be the best player I can be and like win a World Series or whatever, but like,
he basically has to be what he's been the last 3 years for every year of that deal for it to make sense.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean,
how old is he? He's not like young.
I think he's like 29. So you'll
29?
get his 29 through 38 seasons. And the crazy thing is he's probably not going to throw one pitch next year. So he's going to be a DH next year for hopefully 150 plus games. I mean, for him to be worth it, he's going to have to hit like 60 homers. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I could not believe the number when it came down. And the people on baseball Twitter are saying with the deferrals and inflation and everything, it's really only 10 years, 488 million. I'm like, oh, wow, so cheap. Like, that is just absolutely mind-boggling. But I like the guy. I think he's everyone in baseball's second favorite player. Everyone's got their favorite player on their own team, and he's absolutely second, the way Ichiro was in the past, the way Ken Griffey Jr. was for anybody who liked baseball in the past. Like, this guy is the marquee name in the sport. But long term, I'm like, that is just a massive bet that the Dodgers
like Anthony Rendon. What?
8 for 240. And I think he's played like 60 games the last 3 years total.
Like, even some of the pitcher ones, like boom, arm falls off.
Well, Steven Strasburg one is the worst one in sports history. 7 years, 220 million. He has thrown one pitch. Like, he threw a pitch right after he signed it, blew out his arm. They are going to hold a retirement ceremony for him this year, and he's still got 3 years left on the deal. Like, that one's unbelievable.
Like, I'm trying to think of the one. I don't know if he ever got like a long deal, but like Verlander was like the only guy that like just was a horse for like 20 years.
I think the Scherzer deal with Washington was a good one.
But didn't Scherzer sign like a?
It was like 5 for 150 or something, some big number, and then then he signed another one after that.
Yeah, for me, it's not like the 700; it's like the 10 years.
Yeah, the Pujols one.
Yeah. Horrible. Oh my! Couldn't even move.
Yeah, they said he was 42 at the end of his contract. He was like 56. Yeah, that one was
even wild. In hockey, they just extended Ovechkin like $9.5 million. Which, by the way, for you non-hockey fans, $9.5 million a year is a chunk of change
Mm-hmm.
in the NHL. This dude is going through the motions like every night on the ice. Like he's a shell of himself.
Just stands in the penalty circle with his stick up,
Yeah.
being like,
and I just like, I don't know if soccer really does, like football, you just don't even, that's a whole career.
mm-hmm.
Like,
It's
I mean,
unique.
this might be a wild take, but like, I don't think that would work for Mahomes.
Yeah.
Like,
or give that contract to like 28-year-old, 29-year-old LeBron James. Even that may not work,
I'll be honest, that one might have. You give a 10-year deal to LeBron at 28. I think that's probably the best you can say. Like he's almost 40 and he still looks like incredible shape.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I mean,
but
I don't know.
He's wired differently, right? Brady, same thing. He would have done that. That would have worked out too. But
even if it works out on the athlete's body holding up, like, does it actually work out financially for the team, especially if you're in a league with a cap?
Mm-hmm.
Like
crazy.
This could be crazy, but I think Mahomes eventually is going to play at a level that is not going to outweigh like, oh, we could have allocated this money like otherwise.
And Ohtani's almost a guarantee to fall into that category too.
Yeah, like in year 3, not like people think like, oh, the last couple of years, those will be the bum years. No, I mean he might break down at 32.
Yeah, not everybody can be, an all-timer who plays for, 18 or 19 seasons. Like there's no way you can just immediately guarantee that that's going to happen. But that's what you have to do in baseball with the way these contracts go. Like I'm sure if the Dodgers said, oh, we'll do 6 years, 420 million, some number like that, Ohtani would be like, hell no, I can get 10, 12 years from other people. Like that's just the way it is. So
if I was, I'd be like, good man, like have a good life.
Be like, yeah, the Angels are probably offered him more. Like he was like, no, I'm
if
not.
I could console an Angels fan, which I don't really want to, but like this move of not retaining Ohtani is going to work out better than A, you keeping him, or B, like any of the other ones, the Pujols, the Rendon.
Yeah, and once they get Trout off the books, which there were rumors they were trying to trade him, it's like then they can operate like a real sports franchise again, which they haven't for about 7 years at this point. I think they were last a competitive team in like 2014. One more thing before we close the pod. I just wanted to say the Lakers raising a championship banner for winning the in-season tournament. God. Barf.
I don't know what the rating. Like, I'm honestly kind of shocked the players embraced it so much. Like, I mean, I know I think each player got like $500K. Mm-hmm. That's no small amount of money, especially if you're not LeBron James. But yeah, I saw a video of LeBron James popping champagne for the in-season tournament. I'm like, what the actual fuck is going on?
What are we doing?
Yeah, banners fly forever. Oh my God.
That's like the Sharks regular season banner. At the top of the Shark Tank.
This feels worse. I don't know why. Like it's just maybe because the first year they've done it, but like people were trying to. I've seen people try to explain it like a soccer. They do those like in season.
Yeah.
But I feel like the way soccer does it it's very different.
Like the FA Cup in England. Any team can join the FA Cup. It's not just the Premier League teams. If you find 10 dudes off the street that you want to play with, you can register for the FA Cup like a year in advance and play in these lower levels. And it's like this grassroots thing that's been around 150 years. It's one thing. And then there's the Champions League, which is like, say there was an NFL in every country, and then the winner of each of those NFL leagues all going to Super League. That I get.
I think that's really cool.
What the hell is this?
This is the same league.
Playing the same games, and they count towards the regular season record.
They count towards another trophy that's the actual trophy.
What are we doing?
I don't get it.
It gives us something else to bet on, I guess. I don't know.
I really hope. And then on top of it, like the court designs and the jerseys were just fucking horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like
a difficult watch.
Horrible. Yeah. Like even if you wanted to turn the game on, you're like, what am I like? You know those movies that have like, or shows that have like all those like lights, and they put up like a warning, like if you
If you're
Like,
sensitive to strobe lights, yeah.
yeah, they should have done that.
Yeah.
No, it's a complete joke. A complete joke. I hate it with every part of my body. The in-season tournaments, like, stop making the regular season more devalued. Cut the game. The NBA and the NHL, for that matter, should play like 60 games at most.
Yeah.
MLB, cut it in half. Like,
We
with the
say it
in-season
every week.
tournament,
And it's
LeBron
like
James.
yet another reason, the Ohtani deal, the NBA in-season tournament, yet another couple reasons why the NFL is by far the best product in all of sports. Like 17 games, 7 teams make the playoffs, no in-season tournament, no 10-year contracts that ruin a franchise for a full decade. This is why it's the best product, and this is why we.
I mean, other leagues really better watch out, because I've said it before. The NBA and MLB think they're like they are well behind college football.
Mhm.
Like in college football, with a boom next year when the new TV deals kick in.
And the 12-team playoff.
I mean, they announced, I saw today, the Monday night games, the SEC, like Texas, Georgia plays next year, and then Alabama plays Oklahoma next year, and then the Big Ten has, you're going to see Michigan versus like Washington, like it. I mean, when like that, there's a reason why the NBA on ABC games, those Saturday prime times, really don't start until like February, because they can't put them on a weekend in the fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the continued growth of the NFL is growing college football even more, and it's like football is leaving the other sports in the dust, and for all the reasons that we outline, ballooning contracts and like freaking cartel behavior by the MLB owners, just absolute bullshit. The NBA with their in-season and their resting players. It's just the product is so devalued.
I honestly, I should have known, but I really wish the NBA players just came out and mocked this tournament, but they didn't. They kind of said, "Oh, like, it's cool."
Yeah, I mean,
they acted like it was a real championship.
So ridiculous. And I don't think the fans thought of it as anything. Maybe the Lakers fans are like, "Oh, this is amazing." Literally everyone else who watched was like, "Okay, cool." Like, so another opportunity to make money.
Say like the Boston Celtics win the NBA Finals, the one in June, and like, I can't wait for the social media stuff that's going to come out. Like, oh, Lakers and Celtics, both NBA champs, 2023.
I can't wait for the Michael Jordan never won an in-season tournament. I'm going to be like, get the fuck out of here. Like,
Michael Jordan would rather be playing baseball or like at the craps table than playing in-season basketball tournament.
Yeah, playing golf, fishing, anything. He would be like, no, I only play for the one in June. All right, thanks everybody. We'll wrap it up. That's another edition of You Like That Feels Great Baby podcast. We'll be back again next week. Hopefully we'll be in an even more boisterous mood after a couple of Niners and Vikings victories. Yeah, thanks everybody for listening. Happy holidays. We'll be back with episodes over the holiday season. We'll probably take a little break around Christmas, but for the most part, we'll be with you every Monday throughout the season, throughout the playoffs, and leading up to that Super Bowl. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.